35 on CKNW in the world today. We get a lot of email and obviously calls complaining about politicians and governments and their sometimes only passing interest in telling the truth, the whole truth. They spend millions and millions of dollars on communications, making sure the spin matches the political agenda. And really, isn't party politics all about swaying voters to a particular point of view? So is it possible for us to be governed by politicians that tell the truth all the time? Or is that just too much to ask for? I received some emails from a listener by the name of Jamie Scott, who's putting together what he calls the Truth Party Project. Intrigued, I asked Jamie to join us to add to this ongoing debate and conversation about politics and how we're governed. Jamie Scott's on the line with us this evening. Jamie, nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you, John. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. It's a grand sounding name, the Truth Party. What's the idea? What's the philosophy behind it?
Well, the philosophy is that there's no reason why our politicians and our political leaders can't tell us the truth all the time about everything, and have the media also investigate thoroughly all the truth whenever the politicians are keeping something from us, and then letting the people decide what actions to take, whether their perspective is left or right. And of course, I'm going to get into these divisions, which, aren't really divisions. Most of us are just in the middle, but we're sort of divided into different groups just to keep us sort of arguing amongst ourselves instead of tackling some of these issues head on.
And is that your perception, that a lot of what's going on is just people arguing among themselves, arguing points that oftentimes don't make any difference in the bigger picture?
Well, what's going on now, most currently with the World Economic Depression, is the people know that something's wrong, and they know that they're not being told the whole truth, but they're not sure what to do about it. And everybody that I talk to is like, well, when I said I was going to come into politics, they say, well, either you better learn how to lie or politicians always lie. And it doesn't have to be that way. In regards to the economy, I'm happy to come on after your last guest, because you were both discussing that there's either, there's only two options. We either borrow more money or we cut spending. And under our current economic and political systems, those are the only two options. And they both end up in a continuing, ongoing depression, which is going to get worse. What we're going to offer is the third option, which is to cancel all of these debts, personal and national. And we have a realistic plan for doing so, and we can sort of turn the entire world around in short order just by being honest.
But how do you say to people who have invested, people who have money tied up in all of this, we're just going to cancel that now? We're just going to say, write all of this off, and because what you're talking about is a completely a different economic and political system.
Yeah, what we use around the world in every country now, using a paper currency, gets their money issued to them from a private central bank. And instead of countries issuing their own currency to their people for them to, function, whatever kind of country, a democracy, a communist, a dictatorship, whatever, countries used to nationally issue a currency, and that's what the people would use. Now the governments are borrowing this currency privately, and when the banks issue the money to us, like Federal Reserve in the United States, for instance, they issue real paper currency, but when it's time for the government or the people to pay that money back, even if they were to give all the money back, they can't get out of the debt because of the application of interest. And the interest is not printed off. So the people in the country can never get out of debt. And as soon as your nation uses a private central bank, you're assigning your people into a perpetual debt slavery model that they can never get out of, no matter if you decide to increase stimulus and prolong the situation and, sort of put a stay on the depression, or if you want to go through austerity and have the depression come in rather rapidly, which is likely to happen, it's still the same result. If you have a private bank, your country is going to end up in default.
Well, isn't part of the problem, and I don't know that I agree completely with what you say, but isn't part of the problem that those dollars, those bills, those pieces of paper that we all carry around with us, or at least we used to, that they aren't particularly backed by anything. They don't. They're not backed by gold, which they used to be. We used to be on a gold standard where, in the old days, in the 70s, I suppose, the $33 US was worth 1 ounce of gold. Well, these days, governments can keep printing this stuff willy-nilly because it's not tied to anything.
Well, that's absolutely right. All of our paper currencies are now backed by nothing. And so governments are printing uncontrollably. They do it in different ways. The United States, they physically print the money, and they printed $24 trillion in the last year and a half since the new administration's come in. Not that it was any different or worse than the last administration. But in Canada, we don't physically print the bills. The currency is issued by banks as debt in the form of loans. And that money, when businesses or people take out loans and mortgages, gets digitally entered in their accounts and then added to our existing money supply, which draws off the value of the original dollars in circulation. And you end up, it's basically a pyramid scheme that has to collapse, and all paper currencies are going to collapse worldwide. We're just last because
we've got some oil. We've got some oil and stuff.
Exactly. Thank you. We have the most resources to take as collateral for non-repayment, so we're going to be the last ones to find out. We sit here and look at Greece and say, well, they retired too early, or they spent too much money on social programs or socialism. It's nonsense. They can't get out of debt, just like the United States can't get out of debt, and Canada can't get out of debt. No country can unless you replace the governments, bring in an entirely new economic system, and cancel and delete the debts. Everyone starts from scratch.
You're an intriguing fellow. We will continue our discussion with Jamie Scott. He is leading what he calls the Truth Party Project, and we'll continue our discussion after this break. Stay with us. 6:45 on CKNW, talking with Jamie Scott, director of the Truth Party Project. So I'll play along with you here. So, okay, now we've declared all debt null and void. Then what? Then where we go?
Well, assuming the Truth Party has been voted in wherever this has happened or everywhere, we give our voters insurance so that a politician can never lie to them again. Mandatory letters of resignation signed in advance. Anytime a politician is caught in a lie, either on the campaign trail or in their term, anything in regards to their official capacity, they're out. There's no reason for us to have a plan where somebody lies and our best option is to wait 4 years and then vote them out and bring in someone else. Don't think that any of these parties that we have voted for historically are looking out for our best interest, or they would have told us about the banking.
Well, I mean, that's fine, but lying is an integral part of human nature, of human experiences. And can you put that kind of test, that kind of make that kind of demand of people who are, human beings? They lie.
Well, everybody lies in their personal lives, myself included. I'm not going to say I'm a saint. But when it comes to dealing with taxpayers' money, everything needs to be open and accountable. So there's a debate going on whether or not we should have access to MPs' expense reports. Mm-hmm. Every constituent should have online access to their MP's bank account, not their personal account, but their government account, and see where they spend every dime. Yeah. They have no right to secrecy in regards to that money because it's not theirs, it's ours. Yeah. And we can just let this trickle up. When a politician makes a statement of what he's going to do once he gets in power, that is his mandate, and that is what he should be able to do. Anything beyond that, say bringing in the creation of an HST or something, that would have to go to the polls, because we didn't put him in power to do that. We put him in power to do what he said he was going to do, and nothing else.
So, I mean, clearly more accountability, more transparency. I mean, these are all the things that people I think are demanding in this day and age. And it would seem to me that with the various methods of communication we have and the internet and all of that, that a lot of these things could be streamlined, could be made to happen. You say going to the polls. I wonder if actually physically going to the polls has become passé simply because of the technology that's available to hold accountable politicians to greater account.
Well, if you're taking us down the path to electronic voting, I'll stop you along the way.
Okay.
I think that we always are going to need to vote with a paper ballot so that we can go and check our pencil marks in the event of a recount. And one of the tenets this party stands for, and there's really only three things before we get painted into anything else. Mm-hmm. Politicians must tell the truth. You can no longer have any private central banks in any nation, and we can't have electronic voting because we have to be able to have a system where nothing could be hacked.
Mm-hmm. So you just don't trust anybody.
Well, let's not trust people. Let's know things.
Yeah.
We have got to a situation right now in the world where most of our decisions, whether they're military or economic or political, are allowed to proceed because the people trust those who are telling them what's happening. Mm-hmm. We have attributed credibility to certain media outlets and certain politicians. Mm-hmm. So what they say goes, whether or not it's actually the truth. We need to stop checking with people and start checking into things.
If you have stimulated somebody to want to know more about the Truth Party Project, how do they get a hold of you, or where do they find more information?
I have a website with practically nothing on it. I am literally alone. It's truthpartyproject.org. But if you wanted to hear maybe a little more explosive stuff, you could go to youtube.com/thetruthparty, and then I sort of break down some of the issues and some of the economic issues that we're facing, because the next 18 to 24 months have the potential, when you have systemic dollar collapse nation after nation, once it hits the United States, the entire world outlook is going to be different than anything we've ever known. So we have to address that, and we all need to start talking about it. And that's what we used to do back in the old times. You know, Socrates and people would sit around and discuss politics. And now, through this etiquette of never discuss politics, no one knows what's going on, and eventually it leads to tyranny, because we just leave things up to the strongest man or group who does. And right now, if you're sitting in a group of men, you're likely to learn a chokehold and not much else.
Truthpartyproject.org.
Yes, sir.
All right, man.
I appreciate it, John.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good talking to you. Jamie Scott, director of the Truth Party Project. Truthpartyproject.org if you're interested in more of what Jamie had to say. 6:51 on CKNW.